Let's go now to our new guest to bring in and just update us on a range of things happening in London, but also things happening beyond the royal realm. In a matter of hours, Anthony Albanese will land in London and he'll join world leaders from around the globe who themselves are arriving for Monday's funeral. The preparation, the organisation, all of that will have been massive. And as a Commonwealth realm, Australia will have a significantly larger contingent at the funeral than many other nations. Joining me now is someone who knows plenty about all of these sort of operational issues in relation to Australia and the UK, a former Attorney General and High Commissioner to the UK, George Brandis. George, great to have you on the program.
Good to see you, Peter.
You know what it's like to prepare for a PM's visit. When you were here as High Commissioner, we've got 10 eminent Australians coming along to represent us at the funeral. We'll obviously have the Governor-General and the Prime Minister. Give us a sense of what's going on behind the scenes.
Well, there'll be an enormous amount of logistical preparation. I mean, I speak to my friends at Australia House, quite often, and I saw one of them as recently as last night, and, I'm aware that with a Prime Ministerial visit is a big deal.
At any time?
At any time. A visit by the Governor-General is a big deal at any time for them both to be coming together with a lot of other eminent Australians, including, for example, John Howard, who's been invited as in his capacity as the recipient, the only Australian recipient of the Order of Merit, which is the highest honour that the Queen can bestow. It's more important than a knighthood. So there is an enormous amount of just logistical and practical work being done at the moment.
We've also got our VC, Victoria Cross recipients, coming. I've read some commentary in Australia and they're way off the mark. They're not sure necessarily whether that was a decision of the Prime Minister or what. You would know, as I do from my time, that VC recipients are routinely invited to London.
Yes, that's right, and that acknowledges the extraordinary and peculiar honour that the Victoria Cross is. A recipient of the Victoria Cross on ceremonial occasions takes precedence over any other military officer, for example, over the Chief of the Defence Force, and that reflects the prestige and significance of that particular decoration.
Talk to me about your very good friend Ms Truss. Since we last spoke, she's now Prime Minister. Tough fight to get through the parliamentary votes, but she was odds-on favourite and she performed as we expected when she got out there to the rank and file vote. She's very popular with the Tory base. What an extraordinary 7 or so days for her. Absolutely.
I mean, the Queen died about 48 hours after she swore Ms Truss in as Prime Minister. And there was a fittingness, I must say, about the fact that the very, very last picture the British public or the world had of the Queen was at work, as she has been for more than 70 years, performing one of her most important constitutional functions, that is, to invite a Prime Minister to form a government in her name. And that picture was run in all the papers last Wednesday morning, and by Thursday lunchtime the Queen had died.
So we'll have a coronation. Some say it could be 6 to 8 months, unlikely to be longer than that in the modern world. Ms Truss has an election in 2 years' time. The very early days of her prime ministership are framed by this event, and of course it'll be then intersected by the coronation. How do you think she started?
I think she started extremely well. This is a very unusual time. Nobody could prepare themselves for this. Although people knew the Queen was going to die before too very long, nobody expected it to happen quite so suddenly and unexpectedly. Mercifully, there was no long, slow decline. She was, as I said a moment ago, at work until literally her last day. So Prime Minister Truss won't have been sort of in the mental space for this when it happened. But I think she has lent dignity and humanity to the occasion. Her decision to attend with the King the visits to the various nations that comprise the United Kingdom in Scotland and in Northern Ireland was a very well-judged decision. She hasn't sought the limelight, though. I mean, this is all about the late Queen and, of course, about the King. But to know that the political leader of the nation is quietly there in the background but attentive and at the same time, I think is a good look.
So it's wall-to-wall coverage here, as you'd expect, obviously, about the Queen's death. The one thing that is starting to come back into the headlines is the energy crisis. You've had plenty of British winters. It was a dominating feature when I was here recently in the newspapers. This is a huge political challenge for the new government.
It's a huge political challenge for all governments, particularly governments in the Northern Hemisphere facing a bitter winter and the effect of Putin's invasion of Ukraine. And the fact that so much of Western Europe is still reliant on importing Russian gas, although they're trying to reduce that reliance very rapidly, but still the impact this winter will be enormous. Now, here in the United Kingdom, the effect, which is not reliant on Russian gas, but nevertheless is reliant on the world energy market. There are horrendous predictions as to energy bills. One reliable forecaster said that by January of next year, the average annual household cost of electricity bills will be about £5,300. It's about $10,000 a year, which for very poor households is about a quarter of the budget. So Ms Truss has announced as one of her very first measures, this was even before the Queen died, she announced it on her first day in office, that the government would subsidise electricity bills to put a cap on them. But of course that means huge outlays of public money to do that, which will drive an already heavily debt-burdened budget even further into debt with long-term consequences as well.
Just before we go, you're a shrewd political analyst. Are you surprised? The ABC's gone hard. We've seen the Greens, we've seen the usual suspects, Thomas Keneally, Peter Fitzsimons and others pushing for the Republic before the Queen is even buried. Are you surprised they've not held off, or did you expect this sort of push?
Well, look, knowing some of the personalities, I guess I'm not very surprised. But
counterproductive?
I'm sorry they have. I mean, there was always going to be a revival of the debate about whether Australia should be a republic on the death of the Queen, and that's entirely appropriate. I mean, nobody's saying that debate shouldn't revive, but I would have thought common decency and just ordinary good manners would tell people just to hold off just for a couple of days, as you say, Peter, that the funeral hasn't even happened. It's sort of vague. It's sort of slightly like seeing beneficiaries under a will squabbling over the estate before the testator's body is in the ground. So, I mean, I just wish these people, including people who claim in some ways to speak with the voice of the nation, like ABC broadcasters, would just have the manners to wait until after the funeral to revive this debate. They only have to wait for a couple of days. Decency, dignity, appropriateness should tell them to do that, and I just wish they'd behave.
I think we all do. We all do. We'll leave it there, George. Thank you for your time.
Thanks.
George Brandis.